So here we are again in the SharePoint Admin Center. We are going to click on Active Sites. And we're going to click on the URL here to open up the March 2023 SharePoint site. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on another team SP site. Let's just take a quick look at the site contents in both of these sites. Here we have the gear icon that always takes a little bit of time to load. We see we have a few lists that were created in this site. Now we'll look in the March 2023 site contents as well. Here we can see there are a lot of different things in here. So then we'll go to ShareGate. This is our third-party tool for SharePoint, Microsoft 365, SharePoint and Teams management, governance to a certain extent, and migration. Here is where we would look for users, but here on copy is where we would look at doing our migration work. Here you can see copy structure and content. Content only teams, which we looked at a little bit, just very briefly in a previous video. Planner plans and merged teams. So we're just giving you a peek into what it's like to be a SharePoint migration person if you were using this ShareGate tool. A lot of these options, notice import from file share to SharePoint. So if you have a lot of documents, you can move that into SharePoint with this tool as well. Other migration tools have a lot of similar pieces. The user interface is often very different. So don't expect to see the same thing, but a lot of the same capabilities, not all, they each have different strengths and weaknesses, do exist. So at this point, what we want to do is we're going to walk through copying structure. Now what that means is that we're not just copying the text or content out of a site, but we're running a copy that includes the structure such as the permission groups, the columns so that we wouldn't have to rebuild those, the content types, meaning that there are custom content types in some sites, as you'll see in this demonstration. There are lots of scenarios where you're going to only want to copy content, but if you have the ability and you're not worried about carrying any bugs over from the old system to the new, then copying the structure is the easiest one because that's where the system does the majority of the work for you. So first we're going to go here and we're going to copy this URL, March 2023. And we are going to be taking a list that I migrated out of a different site, right here, migrated list, and we are going to be doing a structural copy move into another team SP site here. So first we got that one URL. We're going to click on copy structure and content. I'm going to hit Control V to paste that URL in. If I was working with a SharePoint on-prem, which is not in the cloud, not in the Microsoft 365 environment, but in a physical location managed by your company, sometimes it's a virtual location managed by your company, but at any rate where the responsibilities of the infrastructure were managed by your company, then often we would use this current Windows user, and it would potentially tie in to a legacy Active Directory account as well. In this case, though, while we are working entirely in Microsoft 365, we are going to use the browser authentication and click Connect so that we can connect to the source. If we had multi-factor authentication set up, as all production environments should, in that little pause that we just saw, it would have been the area where it had you use your device or software, whatever solution you were using, and software, of course, but whatever solution you're using for the multi-factor authentication. Notice one thing that is different if you're doing a structural move than a copy content only move is all you see in the structural move at this window is the site. You're not yet seeing the pieces inside of the site, but if you were doing a copy content only mode, you would be seeing the pieces like lists, libraries, etc. here inside the site so that you could choose from that. But because this is a structural move, we don't have to do anything but click Next. Now we need to go back and copy the URL from the site that we're going to move things into, and I mean copy things into, not move, our destination site. And again, we will change this to browser. Now, if you're doing a lot of operations, you might want to choose Remember Site as default connection. I do that a lot different times if I'm doing a lot of different things, particularly when I'm doing copy content only moves. And you can click Connect now. And again, here's where you should be prompted for MFA, multi-factor authentication. So again, nothing but the site to choose from there. You just click Next. Now here's where you can see the site objects. So we're not seeing much into them at this point. We're just seeing sites, lists, libraries. So sites we see right here, lists and libraries. Now we're seeing a list of the lists and libraries that are in each site on each side. This in the March 2023 site, this in the Another Team SP site. So here, this is the list that I want to migrate in with all of its content, all of its structure, all of its permissioning, all of its content types. Now I could easily create this list in this site itself without being in a tool and create the structure of it because it exists in my tenant. This URL right here, this part right before SharePoint.com, that is your tenant. So it would have whatever your company name, whatever your company set up as the tenant name right there. And then .sharepoint.com, everybody has, /sites, and then the name that the site was created as. So within the site itself, I could just easily create a list from an existing list, but it wouldn't have the content and it wouldn't necessarily pull all these things as you see on the left that can be pulled with this structural migration. Notice content types. If you look at this, can we do that? That is a custom content type. Over here, you see it does not exist right now. So we will go back here, click on lists and libraries, and for these little peeks into the life of a SharePoint migration specialist, you'll just get to see a couple different pieces, but hopefully it whets your appetite to get in and dig in and play around and test, because you can too download a free trial of this. And if you have a 365 development environment to play with, you can work with it off of that, and you can get a free 365 development environment from Microsoft. You just have to do your Google search and contact Microsoft and sign up for the free developer account. Okay, so The next thing we want to do before we do anything else is we'll look on options right here. Going into options, we see we have the title. Now this is what do we want the title to be in the new site. So this is what it is in the source site. What do we want it to be in the destination site? We can leave it the same if we want, or we can make it anything we want. So we will put it in, we'll say another migrated list. And here, this we also customized previously in a migration test that I did, but it would not naturally have been just a copy of what is there. But you can make the URL anything you want up to the point it cannot be empty. And notice what happens here, must not exceed 50 characters. So we are just going to go back. I'm going to hit Control A, make it AML. That is not what I would recommend in most cases. In most cases, it's a better idea to make your URL readable, user-friendly, but also balance that with keeping it shorter rather than longer. So here then you choose your operation mode, copy and replace, copy and keep both, copy if newer, don't copy existing. This is much more applicable if you're copying content only. But here we're copying something that we know doesn't exist in the new site. And so we can leave this as is. If you want to be safest bet is always copy if newer only. Either way, it's going to work. Copy and keep both can create duplicates. There are specific use cases for all of these, even if some of them might intuitively seem like not a good idea. You can choose this manual prompt. I'm not going to say you can rely on it. Haven't had the best luck with that in the small number of cases that I found a use case for it. But I will say that that is certainly not your ideal, because what you want is a system to be doing the work, not to make you sit there and push buttons the entire time. Now here's your caveat in the configurations. Caveat. I'm not sure if I can speak right now, but user alerts. If you click on this, notice this warning. User alerts may be fired during the copy. So really, I recommend that you do not select this. Not unless you just absolutely know that you're the only one that'll get a million emails and you don't care. Okay, you may have to manually recreate some user alerts. All of this you don't have to worry as much about because you are just doing the full structural move, copy all of it. But in many cases, web parts or legacy pieces you don't want to carry over. But again, you're not going down to the granular level of detail as much when you're doing the structural move. So you're doing that for ones that you can just trust that you can thoroughly move from here to there. Workflows, it's also important to note that Microsoft sent out an email today, in fact, stating that new tenants will no longer be able to create or run workflows as of April 2024 through the SharePoint workflow engine, which is the SharePoint 2013 workflow engine, as that is the latest version of any workflow engine they ever created. And existing tenants, people who've had their Microsoft SharePoint Online sites for a longer period of time, they say will stop being able to use the workflows. The workflows will just stop functioning in April 2026. So that is what they say. Microsoft changes their timelines all the time, but that has been their official announcement today. Now you'll click Set List to Modern Experience unless you have an unfortunate use case where you are trying to keep them in the classic experience due to some functionality that doesn't exist in the modern experience. And I say an unfortunate scenario because You will not be able to trust that those classic experience lists and libraries will continue to function the same way tomorrow, 2 months from now, 2 years ago, from now forward, than they do today, because the classic experience is not, it does not coordinate with the Microsoft updates as they're trying to phase all of that out. So, for example, if you were migrating a document library with document sets, and you use the classic experience so that you could see the document set welcome page, since it hasn't yet been working the same way in the modern experience, then you would not want to set list to modern experience if you were trying to drag out how long you could continue to enjoy that welcome page experience in document sets. But in general, the ideal scenario is that you will want to and will be able to set list to modern experience. So once you know for sure that you've made all the choices you want, and if you have some reason why you don't want all the version history to go over, you can choose this and then customize that to whatever you want it to be there up to a point. But I don't want that limited. I do not ever limit that, but there are use cases for that. Then you can select this check mark to save and close. I'm going to go back because we didn't look at this. We'll go ahead and change this to custom. We want it to copy into this selected site. So then we'll click save and close there, and we'll go into the mappings. Here, if there's an unresolved user or group, that means that in the source site that you are copying from, it is possible that a former employee who no longer exists in Azure Active Directory is listed in a previous site as a modified by person or created by person, or someone who has been listed in a person or group data type column, which is the object type column associated with their Azure Active Directory account. And if it was an old SharePoint site on the legacy Active Directory, not Azure Active Directory, then in that kind of person or group. So if they don't exist in the new site, then SharePoint cannot identify them and put that information there. So in case there is someone like that, or there may be a former employee, which very often happens, you need to give it a replacement. So you could say system account, you could say SharePoint app. In some cases, you might have the ability to say SharePoint administrator, or if you had some reason why it would seem sensible to put another user's name, you could also do that. And then permission levels. A lot of times, it might be a good idea to replace edit level permissions with contribute level permissions, because edit level permissions, although they can be changed in the site, by default they enable the users to do things like delete lists and libraries. And typically, when people give edit permissions, they're thinking that they're just providing the ability to add and contribute. So you can edit that in another place, but you can also create a bit of a safety net by just changing that to contribute. It's completely up to you, but the default level permission of the Microsoft 365 group in the SharePoint team site is edit at that root level. Now we hit save to save those changes, and we run a pre-check right here. And if you wanted to, you could schedule the copy or start the copy. For safest bet, before starting it or scheduling it, you can run the pre-check to see if there's anything that the system right away identifies is a problem. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Yes, cancel. because it's pre-checking on everything, which makes me think I did not select what I wanted, but we'll see. I did select what I wanted there. Okay, so now we'll run that pre-check one more time. And so it's probably going through everything, since it ultimately that is the point of the structural move, where it's going to be looking at the SharePoint groups, the permissions, the content types, and you can see content type there. So that is what was going on. The views of the list, if there were any views created, all of that can be copied with a structural content type structure. It said everything was okay. And so now we'll go ahead and start the copy. Because this is a trial edition that is almost over, it puts that warning there that everything might not work perfectly. So far it's been working just fine with my tests, but you never know. Now here, it's going to do a bit of spinning, and we have this come up, refresh results. So if you're impatient like me and you like to see, oh, success. The green circles with the check are success. Failures are a red circle with an X. Warnings means that it still did work, but it's giving you warnings. That would be a yellow circle. And I cannot remember if it's an exclamation mark or a triangle in the yellow circle. And if you were doing an incremental copy and it was checking to see if something was the latest and had a few things to skip, that would also look different. We're going to refresh that again. Okay. So now you see it's importing the items. And in this case, it might go pretty quickly, but sometimes you can watch it with a big library or list migration. You can watch it just slowly climbing. You can look at what it's going through. These are the actual items, as you see, list items. Here is the version. So notice that was list item version. List item, it's the same item, but in the system, it's two separate things to migrate. But you, at the end of the day, all you see is that latest version. And now copy completed, and it worked. So let's go back here and copy structure again and just take a look at the content types. Notice can we do that was in the old but not the new before. Now it's also in the new. So now we'll go into this site. We copied from the March site, and we're going to refresh the site contents of the Another Team SP site. And here we can see another migrated list successfully showed up. So let's click on that. And you want to do a comparison. How does it look from old to new? Now here, notice we're in the old site. Here, migrated list, it was what it was called there. And it's displaying the same columns in the view that this was displaying. So it copied the view. It's displaying all 4 items, the same created by and modified by. It didn't have any unrecognized users, so it didn't have to do any separate mappings. We'll double check by clicking on this settings and list settings. And let's see if there are any columns that did not show up. Notice this color choice is in can we do that and item. Can we do that and item are 2 different content types. Now let's look at this site and we'll click on the settings and the list settings. And we'll scroll down. See, in this list, it only had can we do that. Item is by default a part of the list that you create. It is the system content type that goes with the list. This particular case, that was deleted. But even though it was deleted, it still picked that up from the system. So notice color choice right here. So we're going to do a little bit of investigative work so that you can see what happened. This is one of the things that can happen in migrations, so it's why you need to check all these pieces and identify what happened. This used to exist as an option in these two content types. It is not in, color choice is not here anymore. Now we want to look at the content types themselves. We can check in this. Can we do that? I'm in the list here. The reason I was able to see that was because I was in advanced settings. I clicked allow management of content types. From here we can click into that content type, that custom content type, and we can see color choice does not exist here. This is the source site, but we're going to go to the destination site here. Now we are going to look. It says that this color choice column came from these two content types. So let's look in first. Can we do that? The custom one. And we can see it does exist there. So what happened in this case is that it inherited this from the item content type, as you can see, source, but also that it doesn't exist in this one, but it did previously. I know that because I'm the one who messed with it and made it happen. So, but these things take a while to disappear from the various sites, and sometimes they don't fully propagate the deletion of various site columns or pieces of content types. So, because of that, even though it appeared to not be here, it was still in the system and came through in that structural migration. So sometimes, if that's a really big issue, you're going to want to do a copy content only migration if you don't want to have any surprises like this. Now we'll go back arrow and we'll look again. Now we're at the item. We'll look in the item content type, and again we can see it has that color choice. Now when you create a content type in this site, we are going to click on this gear icon, site settings, and site content types. When you create a content type, you choose a parent content type, a parent category, and a parent content type. So if you had chosen a list content type and an item, then you would be inheriting the site columns associated with that content type. So if this had previously been edited, as was the case in that other site, then when a new content type was created with this listing the type, it would inherit all of those site columns. I'm going to cancel that. So first, we're going to go down to the item content types. This is that system content type that a lot of the different content types inherit from, including document. So your two most heavily used content types are document and item. Document as a base content type for document libraries, and item as a base content type for lists. So we'll click into that, and there we can see it currently has two columns in it. Notice updates are available for this content type. Please update now. Let's see what happens when we click update. It is updating the content type, and that color choice went away. Now the system did recognize that a change had been made, but it didn't fully propagate enough, and it required us to run that update. So the list itself came through still with that color choice column associated with the item content type. Now if we go back here to the list, another migrated list. Notice we didn't put that into the navigation. It automatically did as part of the structural move. We're going to go back into the list settings. I'm going to scroll down here. Notice we still have these two content types. A color choice has just suddenly no longer has content types that it's noted as being used in since we ran that update. Let's go back to our content type gallery at the site setting level. Let's check on the can we do that content type. And it also no longer has that column. And that is because of the fact that originally it wasn't supposed to carry over to begin with, so it was partially removed, but there was still that final update that needed to be run in the new system. So this is why it's so important to check not just what shows up, but also just see if you have any junk in the back here too. And now we can see that it disassociated from the content types, but it still exists in our list, and we can get rid of it from here because we know it's extra and we don't want our users asking, why did these strange columns show up? We can click on it and get rid of it from here this way if we want, and this is only one of several ways to do it. And then if we scroll down again, now we just have these columns that we were expecting to have to begin with. Just like we see on the front, we see in the settings as well.